I'm always looking at what can I say in these classes when it comes time to talk. I'm always looking at what would make the most difference in terms of supporting you in realizing your true nature. What would make the most difference in terms of assisting you in recognizing the truth, recognizing who you are? And the answer to that question is nothing would make the most difference. Nothing will make a difference. They say that the only real, authentic teacher is silence. However, at the same time that that's the case, we have to deal in the currency that you're used to, and the currency that you're used to is thinking, concepts, ideas. And it creates a process to talk conceptually about that which is non-conceptual, creates a process. It provides you with more realistic and more useful concepts than you have gotten from your conditioning, or you've gotten from your education, or that you've gotten from living your life up until now. The teachings provide us with more realistic concepts. And because they provide us with more realistic concepts, they attract our attention. We get interested in this possibility of waking up, of realizing the truth. Why? Because we hear in the conceptual teachings, we hear that this waking up, this realization of the truth, will bring an end to suffering. And what is the suffering that it brings an end to? It brings an end to believing that the thoughts that occur in your mind are the truth. It brings an end to the belief that you're a physical body. It brings an end to the belief that you're the thinker of the thoughts, that you're a person. It brings an end to the idea that there's anything you can do in this life that will bring an end to suffering. And so we talk about these concepts and attract your attention to these interesting concepts that promise freedom from suffering. And we talk about what that suffering is so that you understand what we mean by suffering. Thinking all the time about life involves a process of comparing your thoughts to what's happening. And this process of comparing your thoughts to what's happening is one in which you believe your thoughts are the truth. You believe your thoughts are right. You believe that your thoughts are the way things should be. And a lot of the time, your thoughts aren't the way it is. The way it is different from the thoughts. And when the way it is different from the thoughts, there's upset, there's conflict, there's anxiety, there's concern. So it's important to understand the suffering. It's important to understand the predicament that you find yourself in your life. Death is coming. Life is unpredictable. You're subject to circumstances. And because the way that we're conditioned in this life is to have this idea that to have life work, to be happy, to be fulfilled, to be able to experience peace and satisfaction, that we've got to have the right circumstances for that to happen. And so we learn through our conditioning, how to get the right circumstances. Make money so you can have the right circumstances. Be attractive so you can attract the right circumstances. Be smart. Get degrees, get credentials. Learn how to play the game well so that you can have the right circumstances. And as we go through that process, one of the things that becomes evident if you stop and pay attention is that no matter how many times you succeed in having the right circumstances, circumstances are changing all the time. They're unstable. Circumstances are unstable. They're changing all the time. The thought process itself is a circumstance. It's changing all the time. So we're trying to establish some certainty, some unchanging reality that can provide some sense of security. And we're so caught up in the rat race, we're so caught up in this process of trying to get the right circumstances that it takes all of our time, it takes all of our thoughts, it takes all of our energy every day to try and get the right circumstances, try and get fulfillment. And because we're so tied up in this process of trying to get the right circumstances, we seldom stop long enough and we seldom pay attention realistically enough to notice that we're playing a game that doesn't work. We're playing a game that will never work. It can't possibly work. And the reason it can't possibly work is because it's not true that happiness and fulfillment and satisfaction and well-being and peace come from the circumstances. It's just not true that that's the case. So most of humanity will wear their body out and live their life trying in every way they can to control the circumstances, to get the right circumstances, trying to keep changing what they're doing, keep changing who you're being, keep changing where you live, keep changing what you own, keep changing the relationships you have, in search of happiness, in search of peace, in search of freedom and well-being. And it's insidious because the reason people continue to play a losing game is because every once in a while you win for a brief period of time. If you look at your life with a realistic eye, if you look at your life in terms of what's actually happening, you notice that your life is like a casino. You keep playing, you keep playing, you keep making the money to keep playing. And every once in a while you get what you want. Not all the time. But when you don't get what you want, you believe wholeheartedly that if you keep working at it, if you keep changing, if you keep improving, if you keep trying to figure it out, get a better theory, a more realistic analysis, that you may succeed. And we're living as a tribe like this. We're living as a society like this. We're living as a human kingdom like this. Everybody's caught up in the game. And because this is a failing game, part of the experience of playing this failing game is frustration. And that frustration can turn to anger and hopelessness. And that can get to a point where a person just doesn't care anymore, just feels like there's no way to win the game. And worse than that, not only is there no way to win the game, but especially for me, there's no way to win the game because of my color, the color of my skin, because of where I was born, because of my socioeconomic situation, because of my beliefs. You know, there are all kinds of matrices involved. And so we see more and more evidence every day of people losing their mind, becoming suicidal and homicidal, being so frustrated and angry that they don't only want to kill themselves, they want to kill other people too. They want to make other people suffer for the fact that they're suffering. So this is the world we're living in. And even though the evidence is clear that the reason that things are the way they are is because everybody's sleeping, everybody's dreaming, everybody believes in this game that can't possibly ever work. And then some people, out of desperation, sometimes when something shocking happens, a loss, sudden loss, or serious diagnosis, or just being depressed or anxious, some people, out of desperation, start looking around at, you know, is there anything I'm missing? Is there any possibility here that I haven't recognized? And if they come across the teachings, and when I say the teachings, I don't mean, I'm not talking about a particular teaching. I'm talking about these teachings that have existed as long as the written word, as long as recorded history. These teachings have existed everywhere in the world in many different forms, but the basis of these teachings have to do with this possibility that being happy is possible, being fulfilled is possible. And these teachings all point to the same thing. They all point to this possibility of waking up from this dream, this possibility of realizing that who you and I already are is happy, who you and I already are is peaceful, who you and I already are is satisfied. And we don't know it. We don't know it. It's a cosmic joke. We're trying to get something we already have. And for most people, the frenzy of this activity of trying to get what you already have has them so occupied. You know, look around. All you have to do is look around and look at people's behavior. Everybody's going somewhere, aren't they? Everybody's doing something, aren't they? Yeah. And if you really start paying attention, you can see everybody's going somewhere and everybody's doing something. They're headed towards somewhere. They believe in some destination. They keep hoping that around the corner will be the answer. Around the corner will be the end of the suffering. And people win just often enough, get gratification just often enough, have pleasure just often enough that it keeps them addicted to the process. Keeps them addicted to the thought activity, which is where all of this angst and intention and motivation keeps being generated. You know, what I want, what I need, what I'm afraid of, constantly, day and night. So some people hear this message and come upon these teachings that have existed since the beginning of recorded time in mystical Christianity, in Buddhism, and Taoism, and Judaism, and Sufism, American Indians, African tribes, you know. This teaching has always been there, you know. It's in all kinds of different ways it's been spoken of. And I'm not talking about institutionalized religion either. No, I'm talking about the essential teachings, the actual teachings of the Buddha, the actual teachings of Jesus Christ, the actual teachings of the Sufi masters, of Muhammad, of the Kabbalah, of the Quran. The actual teachings, not the belief systems that came out of that or the institutional religion that came out of that, but the actual teachings. And if you start to study these actual teachings, They all say the same thing. They all talk about a possibility for realizing the truth, realizing your true nature, realizing reality. And so once you hear that, once you get that message, once you get that invitation to this possibility, you're attracted to it. And so you begin to study, you begin to read Buddhist books or Sufi books or Taoist books or mystical Christian books, or listen to these non-dual teachers and study brain science and consciousness and all the rest of it. The only problem is, when I speak in these concepts to you right now, I'm actually selling you a better lie than the one you believed before. But it's still a lie, selling you a better lie. You start to believe in these teachings the way you believed in whatever you believed before, you're just as lost, but you have a game that looks like a better game, but you're just as lost. So you have to get to a point in this process where you come to the realization that even the teachings are an obstacle to the realization. Even the teachings are an obstacle to the realization. I was reading a story earlier about a Zen monk that went to meet with his master, to meet with the teacher. And in the tradition of Zen, you meet with the teacher to ask questions, to have a conversation where the teacher can get a sense of where you're at and help you to wake up. And this one monk went to the teacher, and before he went in to meet with the teacher, he was talking to one of the other monks, and he said, "I don't know what to do because I don't have any questions." And so the other monk said, "Oh, well, just ask him what's the fundamental meaning of Buddhism." So he said, all right. So he went in and he asked the teacher. Before he could finish the question, the teacher got up and picked up a stick and started beating him and chased him out of the room. Oh, it's worse here. It's worse here. It's worse here because I don't chase you away, I just keep you addicted to the words, see. And this happened several times. This monk kept going back in to talk to the teacher, and every time he was going back to talk to the teacher, he would see the same monk outside the room and say, "Last time I went in there, he got up and beat me and chased me out of the room for asking him a question." So the monk said, "Don't give up, ask him the same question." So he went in and asked the question. The teacher got up and beat him and chased him out of the room. So finally, he got so fed up that he left the monastery and he went to a different monastery. And he was talking to the teacher there about what happened in the other monastery. And the teacher there said, "Well, you should have really have been bowing to that teacher. He was really giving you high teaching." And the monk said, "Well, I don't understand. What do you mean high? How was he giving me high teaching?" And he was trying to get you to understand that the questions don't lead to the answer. The questions don't lead to the answer. They lead to more questions. The teaching doesn't lead to the truth. The teaching is conceptual. The truth is non-conceptual. The only thing that leads to the truth is practicing the truth. So this is an important thing to understand, that, I say that it's worse here because, I entertain the questions and interact with you conceptually. But you have to understand that the time has to come when that process ends. And until that time comes and that process ends, there's no possibility for your being awake. There's no possibility for you realizing the truth. The time has to come when you stop reading the menu and eat the food, And the eating of the food is not the same at all as the menu. The word pizza is not the same at all as eating pizza. All of the concepts that you hear about the truth are not the truth. So in a way, you're kind of being sucked in, you're kind of being tricked into a process in which you will try as hard as you were trying everything else. You'll try this as hard as you were trying everything else to see if this works, where nothing else worked. And as you try this as hard as you tried everything else, you begin to realize this is just as bad as what you were doing. This is worse than what you were doing, because you really believe in this. The people that teach this tell you, no, this is real, this is true. This will pay, this will pay. You can get paid with this, you can get the fruit. So you really believe in it, but the harder you try, the worse it gets. It doesn't get anywhere. Somebody said, is it the case that the Buddha woke up and realized his true nature through meditation? And the answer to that is no. He didn't wake up and realize his true nature and the truth through meditation. He woke up and realized his true nature and the truth after spending many, many years of his life trying to do that and failing. And when he finally gave up and sat down and just sat in silence, it was there all along. It was there all along. So the process is a process in which you can't help yourself. You know, you're an addict. You're a thought addict. You're a do addict. And you can't help yourself. You can't help yourself but continue to get involved in the drug. Keep using the drug. Keep trying to think your way to freedom. You know, keep trying to believe your way to freedom. Keep trying to do your way to freedom. And it's interesting because when you really look at it the way I just described it in terms of the whole process that the Buddha went through, right? What happened when he gave up was that he stopped being a doer. He stopped doing anything to be awake. He stopped being a doer. That's a clue. That's a clue. And when he stopped being a doer, the concepts didn't matter anymore. Right? So I'll stop with that.